Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's legislative staff training brought to you by the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research at Michigan State University. My name is Arnold Weinfeld. I'm Associate Director at the Institute. And a few technical items before we get started. If you have a question for the presenters, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. You should be able to unmute yourself right now, but certainly raise your hand or put a question in the chat box as well. This session is being recorded, and materials and bios are available on our website, and I'll put that link in the chat along the way, as well as an evaluation. We'd appreciate certainly if you would fill out an evaluation. And with that, I'm going to introduce now our Institute Director, Dr. Matt Grossman. Matt?
Good morning. Fair warning, we're going to have you introduce yourselves. So if you could start getting ready for that, Arnold will call you one by one, and we'd like you to just say your name, your role, and either an issue that you are working on or something to remember you by. I am the director of the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research. We are pleased to put this event on with MSU Government Relations, MSU Extension, and with the very helpful cooperation of the House and Senate business offices. We are very pleased to have the full group together, and we plan to do several more of these. So if there's something that we did not get on the agenda this time, you can always tell us and we will add it. I do want to direct everyone to our forum series as well that we'll be having next week. And there is also still time to register to apply for the Michigan Political Leadership Program for next time period by the end of the summer. So with that, I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves. I think Arnold is going to call you one by one. And again, we need just your name, your staff, and your role, and either something to remember you by or an issue that you have been working on. Arnold?
Thanks, Matt. Also like to thank IPSR staff, Cindy Kyle, our communications and marketing manager, and Beverton Anaganye for being with us today and all of their help. Okay, so you should be able to unmute yourself. I'm just going to run down my list here, and the first name I see is Lamar Lemons. Lamar, would you like to introduce yourself? Or
Certainly. I'm Lamar Lemons. I'm the Chief of Staff for State Senator Betty Jean Alexander. Something to remember by, I was a state representative, first elected a quarter of a century ago. And so I just try to keep apprised of what's going on.
And another little known fact, I used to work for Lamar a long time ago as a staff member. So good to see you, Lamar.
Good to see you too.
Andrew Bundia, I hope I pronounced that right.
My name is Andrew Bundia. I'm a Constituent Relations Coordinator for State Senator Paul Henke. Something to remember me by is that in my last name, the B is silent. So it's Windia.
Thank you, Andrew. Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Mills. I'm just listening in to get some information about the budget because I think it's an interesting process I'd like to learn more about.
Great, thank you. Ava Trevino.
Hi, I'm Ava. I work for State Representative Tyrone Carter. And something that I've been working on is just like a lot of casework and stuff with constituent relations. So that's pretty cool for me, I think.
Thank you, Ava. Ben Dawson.
Hi, my name is Ben Dawson. I'm with Senate Fiscal Agency. I help support the subcommittee on appropriations with the Senate for DNR and Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. This past month or so, been working on the budget, so I was pretty happy to see the budget bills pass on Thursday, and now just kind of tuning in to see what you guys got going on today. Thanks for having us.
Yep. Kyrian Hawthorne.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kyrian Hawthorne. I am the policy director for the House Democratic Caucus. And something to remember me by, when I was hired for policy in 2003, Arnold Weinfeld hired me. Best boss ever.
You're too kind. Thanks, Kyrian. Great to have you here. Dee Forbes.
Hi, my name is Daria Forbes. I'm a legislative assistant at State Senator Betty Jean Alexander's office, and I've been always interested in public service and how the government and legislation can better serve constituents.
Thank you. Ed Smith.
Sure, thank you. I'm from Representative Steve Marino's office, and we sit on the sub-approps of DNR, MDARD, and general government, and the marathon session last week in approps, and very interested in what's the next steps are.
Great. Emily McHarg.
Hi, I work for Rep. Coolzar on his front desk, so I handle constituent relations and scheduling. So been doing a lot of casework and unemployment, which is fingers crossed dying down now, but I'm really excited to learn more about the budget process.
Emma White.
Hi, I'm Emma White. I'm with the Office of Senator Brinks. I'm the Constituent Relations Director, and I am interested in learning about the budget.
Thank you. I have something that says George's iPhone. George, you there?
Well, they may mean me, George D. Michelle from Senator Wozniak's office. I'm interested in the budget too. And the only way you're going to remember me is to remember that George was one of the Beatles.
Very good. Jeremy Reuter.
Good morning, Jeremy Reuter, Director of Statewide Advocacy at Michigan State University in our Office of Government Relations, and work heavily on the budget. And one thing to remember me by is we've done a lot of engagement with our students around doubling the Pell Grant federally. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. And thank you for your support. Appreciate it. Jay Kaiser. Jay Kaiser, are you with us? Okay, how about Julia Walters?
Hi, I'm Julia Walters. I'm a legislative assistant in Senator Hertel's office. And something to remember me by is that I am a student at Michigan State as well as a staffer. And I'm really excited to learn more about the budget process.
Yeah, we figured that would be a draw. I just hope everybody sticks with us through the morning. So thank you. Katie John.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie John, and I'm with MSU's Office of Government Relations. I work with Jeremy, and we're so lucky to have Arnold, who hosts these wonderful development opportunities. So thank you, Arnold, and looking forward to the whole agenda this morning and afternoon.
Thanks, Katie. Katie Olkowski.
Good morning, everyone. And yes, you pronounced that last name right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am the Constituent Services Director with State Representative John Cherry. And right now we're working on a big economic development tour down in Flint to bring some folks in and help advertise. So very fun.
Trying to get Buick City redone, I saw. So
Yes,
Caitlin Neiman.
Hey there, I'm Caitlin. I'm the legislative aide for State Representative David LeGrand. And one thing to remember about me is that I graduated from MSU last spring, so go green.
Go white, thank you, congratulations. Kevin Balfour. Kevin, you there? Okay. Kristen Aldridge.
Hi, Arnold. I am Kristen Aldrich from the Senate Business Office, and I am looking forward to learning more about the legislative staff training, and I will be anxious to get any feedback from staff on things that went really well today, things that you want to know more about for the next training. So I am here to listen and learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for all your support and efforts at putting this together. Lisa Hicks Clayton.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Hicks Clayton. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff with Michigan State Senator Betty Jean Alexander's office. I started as a community liaison with her office and moved up to constituent services, which I dearly love because I believe that we do work for the people. And what I want you to remember, I guess, about me is that I'm a lifelong active learner.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. Mallory.
Hello, I'm Mallory Kylan with House HR, and I helped a little bit in planning this training.
Helped a great deal. Thank you, Mallory. Mark Meyer. Okay, how about Martin Shane Johnson?
Hi, I'm Marty Johnson. I'm going to be a legislative intern for Senator Curtis Hertel Jr. And something to remember me by, I am a sophomore at the University of Michigan.
That's okay. We appreciate you. Mary Gibbons.
Hi, I'm Mary. I do constituent work for Representative Bohutsky, and looking forward to getting a better handle on the budget so I can field constituent questions better.
Very good. Micah.
Good morning, I'm Micah DeMass. I work for State Representative Brad Paquette as front desk, and just looking forward to listening and learning with you all.
Super. Representative, I have someone from the Office of State Representative Sarah Anthony.
Hi, everybody. This is Jack. I am her Constituent Relations Director, and I'm hard at work for the constituents of the 68th District in Lansing.
Great, thank you. Renee Watson.
Hi, good morning. My name is Renee Watson. I am the Constituent Director for State Representative Lori Stone. And one thing you can remember about me is I once ran for State Senate. So I've been not only a staffer, I've been a candidate and an elected official.
Super. Sarah Kesling.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Kesling. I'm the Director of Internal Affairs for Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey. I don't know if I have anything for you to remember me by other than I'm really excited for a warm week next week.
Indeed. Thank you for that. Hopefully they're not lying to us this time. Shay Florian.
Hi, I'm Shay Florian. I'm a digital assistant with the Michigan Senate Democrats, and I am still newer to Michigan, so I'm always looking for ways to make connections and build my community here.
Shay, are you muted? I see you up there. We
Oh,
can't
can
hear
you
you
not-
right now.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Okay. Let's try, very good. Let's try Sydney Hart.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm Senator Hertel's Policy Director and Office Manager. And one thing to remember me by is I previously worked for the Hawaii Legislature.
Wow. T. Horton.
Hi, I'm Tom Horton. I am the newest addition to the Dem policy team, and a fun way to remember me is that I'm proficient in Morse code.
Fantastic. Boy, there's a lost art. T. Collins.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Collins with the House Democratic Policy Staff. And something to remember me by, I've been to all 83 counties in Michigan.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome. Hope pronounced this right. Xiaofeng Li.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
I'm sorry.
Everyone, my name is Xiaofeng Li. I'll be working at Senator Hertel's office this summer, and one thing to remember me by is that I'm also from University of Michigan as a Go Blue person. Sorry, guys. Yeah, pretty looking forward to the summer.
You know, that's okay. We actually at the Institute do quite a bit of work with U of M. We have a close relationship with folks at the Ford School, and so it's fine. Don't worry. I have a phone number, 517-373-5133. Who might that be? Anyone? Okay. Did I miss anyone? If I missed anyone, please go ahead and, oh, I see an Erin Williamson. Erin, are you there? Can you introduce yourself? Okay, anyone else? All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for being here. That didn't take us too past our quote official start time of 9:15. But now we are going to get going with our first session. And that is indeed on the budget. And with that, I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Catherine Summers, who is director of the Senate Fiscal Agency. Catherine has been at the Senate Fiscal Agency for some time and started as an analyst. And Kevin Kurstra, Deputy Director of the House Fiscal Agency, who also has been with the agency for some time and started off as an analyst. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to moderate this session.
Great, thanks so much. It is a privilege to get an update on the budget process right in the thick of it. So without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Catherine for an update on the Senate side.
Thank you, Matt. So as you can see or hear, I'm a little congested today myself, so I apologize for that. So I was listening to some of the introductions. So hello to everyone. Good morning on a Friday. I agree. I can't wait until it gets warm. That is my happy place is, you know, spring, summer in Michigan. You can't get any better than that. Well, you could get better than the spring we've had, I guess. Anyway, but I was listening to some of the introductions. I think the biggest thing, you know, the budget is you know, close to 75 billion, 70 to 75 billion right now, billion with a B, you know, and so it's huge. So I think one of the biggest things to know is that we're here to answer, you know, to provide you with information. So my presentation today is a high level presentation. But we have every piece of every detail anyone could want, you know, on the budget. So please feel like if you come away from this morning and don't, you know, and you still have questions, reach out. We have on our website, and I know on House Fiscals as well, you know, we have all of our documents posted. You can read them at your leisure. You can, you know, reach out to analysts with emails. I mean, just please know that the resources are there for you, and you don't have to feel like you have to become an expert after this morning's, you know, updates. So anyway, I wanted to start with that. So I'm Catherine Summers, relatively newly appointed director at the Senate Fiscal Agency. I think that was in November. But I've been with the agency since, well, I started at House Fiscal for 2 years in 1997, and then moved over to the Senate in 1999. Most of my career has been spent on the school aid budget. So that's where I was most familiar with budgets. But now I'm heading up the agency and very thankful to be doing so. My background, I have a master's in econ from MSU. So that's sort of my start. So to start my slideshow, let me make sure I can share the screen. As you know, it's always kind of fun to make sure that you get a PowerPoint going and sharing. All right. Does that look like a, Matt? I can see you on my screen. Can you nod? Does that look like a?
It's up. Can you do it from the beginning? Because you can
thought
see
I was.
Yeah, no, not yet. Click it again.
It says from beginning to me, and it looks like the SFA IPSR legislative staff training slide.
It's up. We just see the next slides on the side on the show.
Oh, I think because I have the wrong. All right, I can see. I need to share the other screen. 1 second. It always puts, you know, the wrong whatever.
Fine.
How about that?
Bingo. Very
awesome.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, so without, as someone said, without further ado. So I'm just going to cover a few things, and then I'm going to turn over to Kevin, and he will talk through the House side of things. So I'm going to go over where we started, this particular fiscal year's budget process. I'm going to talk about the proposed tax cuts, some key budget differences. So again, not every piece of every budget of every detail, because that's quite massive, and then timeline and process. So the starting point, so there are 2 revenue conferences throughout the year. So there's one in January and there's one coming up in May. So the January Revenue Estimating Conference starts the ball rolling. So the numbers that are agreed to at the January Revenue Estimating Conference are used by the governor in the governor's recommendation, along with if there are proposed tax changes or fee increases or things like that. After the January Revenue Estimating Conference, it was estimated there was about $6 billion in one-time state money and $1.4 billion in ongoing money. So what, the difference there is things like, oh, we didn't expect, huge capital gains tax revenue, for example. Everybody sold off a bunch of stocks, had capital gains as a one-time thing, and that's not going to continue. So that would be an example of a one-time revenue increase. Well, there was lots of that because we didn't, in 2020, the pandemic started and we thought revenues were going to tank, and then there was so much federal stimulus that kept the state going and kept revenues coming in, and people sold off their stocks. Anyway, so we had a lot of one-time state funding available, or we do have a lot of one-time state funding available. We also have some additional ongoing money on top of what we were expecting. So on top of the state money, as you all have been, I'm sure, keeping on top of or seeing in the news, Michigan received about $6.5 billion in relatively discretionary federal funding called State Fiscal Recovery Funding, SFRF, SLRF. There are so many acronyms, or ARP, sometimes people just call it ARP, for the American Rescue Plan Act. So a lot of that money, more than half of that, has been appropriated so far in various budget bills and supplementals. Right now, there's about $2.8 billion of that relatively discretionary federal money left. There is a link here for a chart that we keep track of all of the federal funds that have come in. So I'm not even talking about all of the very specific federal funds that have come in, like for rental assistance or foreclosure or for vaccines or testing. That I don't call that very discretionary. It has a specific purpose. So that's different. But if you want to see all of the pieces, we do have a chart on our website that keeps track of that. So that's where we started. So then the governor proposed a budget in February. She proposed to spend down the one-time money on lots of one-time investments and proposed 2 tax cuts. On a high level, the Senate budgets that have passed are mostly a continuation budget, meaning taking the current year, FY22, and taking it into next year. You adjust it for things like economics and known cost increases. If Medicaid costs are going up, if pupil counts are going up or down, you adjust for those kinds of things, plus some targeted investments, and then also a larger tax cut. So that's sort of the high level on the Senate passed budgets. So looking at the actual dollars, the governor was about $74.1 billion, and the Senate's gross spending was about $74.2 billion. That's got an asterisk on it because in the Senate passed bills, there's $2 billion appropriated as a line item in the Treasury budget for the Senate tax cut fund. That's a little different than a normal, a tax cut, excuse me, retroactively would reduce revenues. This is kind of saying we're setting money aside that we have in the coffers and we're going to appropriate that as a line item. That's how that was kind of crafted. So the $74.2 billion includes this $2 billion appropriated as a general fund tax cut. You can see that the general fund is under the governor 14.3 billion, under the Senate 14.4, but again that includes that $2 billion for Senate tax cut fund. The school aid fund, the other main source of the state's somewhat discretionary large pot of money is the school aid fund. It can be used for K-12, higher ed, and community colleges, as well as on the school employees retirement system. So the governor's rec, 16.6 billion. The Senate rec was about 17.3. So as I mentioned, there's about 2.8 billion of that SFRF, the federal money left. The governor proposed to spend about 520 million of that in her FY23 budget recommendation, and then a bunch of FY22 things. The Senate used about 18 million of that. In other words, leaving a lot of discussion down the road on how to use that federal state fiscal recovery funds. So a brief discussion on the tax cut proposals. The governor included 2 tax cuts, one for roughly 500 million when it's fully phased in, and that was addressing the pension tax, and one for about 260 million for the earned income tax credit. And as I already mentioned, the Senate appropriated 2 billion in tax cuts, 1 billion for one time and 1 billion for ongoing. So an example of a one-time tax cut would be, a sales tax holiday or a rebate check, something that gets sent out as a one-time thing. So some key budget differences. We've got school aid. I'm going to talk school aid, Department of Health and Human Services, Treasury and pensions, and labor and economic opportunity and post-secondary, so higher ed and community colleges. Again, these are just high level, summaries but it kind of, I think, gives you a flavor that the budgets are significantly different. And I know Kevin will then talk about the House proposals as well. So you'll get this flavor that as we're trying to come to, agreement in conference, things are going to be pretty different on the front end. School aid, the governor included a $435 per pupil increase, 220 million or so for at-risk, 171 million for school infrastructure, $150 million for a program called Trails to expand that statewide, that is training school mental health professionals, 150 million for additional special ed funding, $150 million for educator scholarships and onboarding to help new teachers, 56 million for school safety, 91 million for mental health. Again, these are sort of big picture, big ticket items. The Senate budget included a $450 per pupil increase, $10 million for Trails, $25 million for educator scholarships, $25 million for school safety, $30 million for school mental health, and then the Senate's big ticket item is $500 million for school consolidation incentives to help pay off if there's debt in school districts looking to consolidate, how to help them address that debt so that takes away a barrier to consolidate. So DHHS, the governor, a big ticket item in there was a big one-time item for building a state-operated psychiatric complex, 325 million. Also 248 million for dental system redesign, 60 million for wage increases for nursing homes, for non-clinical staff, and then a lot of one-time items. The Senate's bill included 95 million to increase Medicaid reimbursement for primary care services, a smaller increase, but also an increase for dental, so to increase fee for service, the existing plan, but increase those reimbursements. Reducing the number of FTEs in the department to the December level, replacing federal funds. This has been in MERS and Gongwer the last couple of days, I think both in the House and Senate, replacing federal funds with general fund to place restrictions on abortion providers, and assuming about $70 million of lapsed savings. So again, these are, while I'm summarizing these budgets in about 30-second chunks, as you can imagine, and especially if you're on appropriations, if your member is on appropriations or even in any way affiliated with watching these budget, which everybody is, these are massive issues, and the list of differences are really, pages long between these budgets, but I'm just trying to pick up some of the highlights for you. Treasury. So Treasury is where the revenue sharing monies go, are appropriated for local units of government. The governor had a 10% increase for revenue sharing, 5% ongoing, 5% one time. The Senate did that same thing, 5% ongoing, 5% one time. And then, as I have mentioned a couple times, this is where the $2 billion is appropriated for the Senate tax cut fund. So Leo, I need to put my glasses on because this one's a little smaller on my screen here. The governor included, this was an FY22 supplemental request, another $500 million for the SOAR. So this is the, I'm not going to remember the acronym, what it means, but it's the fund to set up for business incentives for, like the GM and the electric vehicle things that have been going on recently. So there was another recommended deposit there. A number of projects in the Leo budget. So labor, this is where a lot of things that don't often fall into any of the other budgets end up in Leo. It's sort of a catch-all. Lots of projects in Leo. 230 million in the governor's rec for this transformational education infrastructure, which would be at U of M for electric vehicles and at MSU for the medical school facility. $200 million for regional empowerment programs, 75 million for grants for cultural diversity and natural beauty. So there were a bunch of one-time items, again, because there's a lot of one-time money available. The Senate included 50 million for blight elimination and 15 million for going pro, and then 4 million to continue monitoring unemployment insurance benefit claims. So Senate didn't include a lot of those other things, but did include a couple different things. Turning to higher ed and community colleges, the governor included 10% increases, which was split like the revenue sharing, half and half, one time and ongoing, and using the existing sort of funding levels and spreading that money across the board. The Senate included 11% and a new formula to provide funding that considers the existing funding levels, student headcount, and degrees conferred. Then the other two big new initiatives in the Senate bills include a new scholarship plan for 2 years free, I believe, at community colleges and at universities, $581 million to pay off. So there were 7 universities that were part of the school employees retirement system. They closed their plan to new hires several years ago. There are still some remaining debts tied to that. And so this, the Senate plan would pay off those debts related to the pension plan that's been closed for several years. So I know Kevin has a really nice chart, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about the old and the new, but I'll let him do the whole timeline or process piece. So the old process, and because this dates me because I'm getting old, the old process was one where they, there are, I think it depends on how budgets are set up, but I think we have 17 budget bills. Half of them would start in the Senate and half would start in the House. And they would, each chamber would start with those budget bills and use until spring break roughly, pass them out of their respective chambers, swap, and then take up the second half and use then the next 6 or 8 weeks to do the second half of bills. Then you'd have the May revenue conference. Then typically by July 4th, you would have, a budget done. The current process, which again has been in place now for quite a few years, is one where both chambers take up all the budget bills at once. And then report them, finish them as we both did. House and Senate both just finished their action. The Senate finished on Wednesday, the House finished yesterday, and then what'll happen is these bills get sort of zeroed out. So the whole package gets sent over to the other chamber. That chamber zeroes them all out and sends them to conference. So that's sort of the stage that we're at right now. Both chambers have adopted their bills. They will swap them, zero them all out, send them all to conference. Then we'll have the May revenue conference on May 20th. Targets will be set, and then at some point there will be negotiations and a final budget gets passed. Other than that, again, the CREC, so the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference, is in 2 weeks from today. If you've been watching, I think revenues are, continue to be on pace and stronger than what was estimated in January. I just put our website here, my own email address, and then if there's questions, but I know I'm going to turn it over to Kevin right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then we'll wait for questions in a bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate getting both the sort of very specific differences between the current proposals and the broad overview of where we are in the process. And we now have Kevin to bring us up to date from the House Fiscal Agency side.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I will share my presentation. Everyone can see that?
Yep, you're good.
Like Catherine has already discussed, both chambers have recently passed their proposals or recommendations for the fiscal year 23 budget. So I will be walking through again some of the very high level, big picture pieces within the House proposal. Like Catherine, I will not go through all of the details. All of those are within our website, which I'll have a link to at the very end. So please reach out if you have specific questions, either to me or to Mary Ann or to our analysts that are assigned to that budget process. So we are more than happy to answer questions and provide information. So gonna kind of walk through kind of a high level kind of balance sheet, if you will, and then talk about some of the big general fund increases, a number of the executive proposals that weren't included, school aid, and then walk through a kind of the life cycle of a budget, if you will. So this table right here shows how the House has proposed to change from current year to date. What this shows is a 7.8% gross increase, adjusted gross increase. Highlights some of the larger changes. As Catherine mentioned, there's that discretionary state fiscal recovery funds that are available. 2.8 is left within this House proposal. 2.1 would be appropriated. So that's a large increase from year to date. You'll also notice the state restricted funds are increasing by $3 billion. That is primarily within the school aid fund proposals that we'll walk through. And then general fund also has a pretty large increase of 1.6 billion. Compared to the executive recommendation, the House is again larger than the executive rec. What I'll note here is that is at least 2/3 of that is related to the House proposing to spend the state fiscal recovery funds within 23. The 500 million that Catherine mentioned was in the fiscal year 22 proposal. So that's kind of the difference with this table there, kind of what we're highlighting. And again, you'll see a large increase for state restricted, which again would be primarily within the school aid fund. Here is just a visualization of kind of where all those funds are allocated. And you'll see the almost 70% is within the Health and Human Services budget and the school aid. So obviously those are the largest budgets to keep an eye on, are the departments that most of the funds go out through. And then you see kind of transportation isn't the next largest. The general fund side, you'll note that this chart does look a little different, except Health and Human Services is still the largest. But instead of school aid, which is primarily school aid funded, You see corrections in higher education, and then the others, which is larger, which we'll try to highlight as we go farther down. So again, as Catherine mentioned, there is a large beginning balance for general fund and school aid fund. 7 billion, 7.4 billion, something like that. And so some of the larger proposals within the House is using 4.3 billion for pension payments, primarily to put down principal payments, if you will. It reserves $1 billion for ongoing tax relief. That is just left on the balance sheet, and there isn't a line item like in the Senate, but there is still a proposal from all three for some type of tax relief. The House would include $750 million for local roads, using the formula with about 2/3 of that going to county road associations, then the other third going to cities and villages. Another large, broad priority on the House side was public safety. Local officer recruitments, some infrastructure proposals, retention payments, out-of-state recruitment. A lot of those were in a supplemental that the House passed previously, House Bill 5522, that would just be put into the 23 budget instead of as a supplemental. And then the last two on as changes is $674 million into a school aid stabilization fund, and then $100 million deposit into the rainy day fund. So these would be kind of taking checking accounts into savings accounts, deposit for future need. Then all told, there will be about $700 million combined left on the balance from all the changes noted here. This kind of details out how the House would appropriate the 4.3 billion for pensions, an additional 1.7 billion for unfunded accrued liability MIPSers payments, 425 million to go into a reserve fund for future retirement reforms. This would pay down the university's unfunded accrued liabilities. And then the last three bullet points were within a supplemental proposal for local pensions, best practices to assist with principal payments, and then also the state police retirement system. So I think again, kind of the big takeaway from the House proposal is pensions. And then kind of the second big thing to take away is the state does propose, or the House does propose, to appropriate all but 700 million of the fiscal recovery funds that were discretionary. You see a lot of it will go to school aid for school safety grants, mental health, teacher recruitment. State police, again, for kind of the public safety initiatives, trooper recruitment, kind of tower and kind of jail outlays. Higher education, these would be for three projects, one at MSU, one at U of M, or through U of M, and then through Wayne State. Community colleges, these funds would be to expand the Michigan Reconnect program for individuals 21 to 24. HHS would be for psychiatric hospitals. Leo, I believe, is Pure Michigan, and then smaller ones. So there are, I think, 7 large programmatic increases outside of kind of the big picture within the House proposal. As I just mentioned, the House would include 263, almost 265 million gross split between state fiscal recovery funds and general fund for various statewide psychiatric projects. This is the House's kind of counter to the executive's proposed single statewide or state operated hospital in Southeast Michigan. Like the Senate, the House does not concur with the executive to roll all Medicaid dental into a single contract, but instead just provides an uplift to the kind of cohort that receives the lowest rate. And then another big House proposal, which I'm sure everyone has heard about, is almost $50 million of general fund for family planning, adoption, maternal health, and abortion alternative programming, as well as conditioning Medicaid spending on policy bills, House Bills 6011. I think all three entities are proposing a fairly large increase for child welfare. And then the last three kind of large House increases would be $175 million to upgrade judicial case management system reporting to have counties and courts communicate with the state for better data collection and tracking. The House includes $25 million of general fund for low carbon energy infrastructure. And the House does propose the lowest revenue sharing increase at 2% compared to the executive's 10%. So where does this House get all the general fund for pensions for the counter proposals? And it's really from not including a significant number of the executive's requests. I think all told, they add up to $1.5 billion, this list I have here. Almost all of it is one time, because again, all three chambers acknowledge that there's a lot of one-time funding compared to kind of an ongoing structural change. So all of these, except for a handful, would be the executive's proposal to spend the one-time. So the various LEO grants. So instead of having $150 million for critical road and bridge infrastructure kind of determined by MDOT, again, the House proposed $750 that goes to locals. The construction projects through National Guard armories, IT modernization, state-owned building maintenance and infrastructure, priority grade separation projects, not increasing wages for non-clinical staff, as well as not increasing the capacity of the state psychiatric hospitals. And then again, some of the larger ones is not concurring with a food security recommendation, electric vehicle charging rebates, pre-weatherization, community technical sports for lead line replacement, food and ag industries grant, and state fish hatchery improvements. And so I think this will be where you'll see a lot of discussions is how to spend the one-time funding, where the House is proposing primarily deposits into the pension systems, and the executive going to have these sprinkled across these various pieces. Within school aid, there are, I think, probably five big priorities of the House. As all three, one of them is the foundation allowance. The House would provide a $300 per pupil increase to get them up to $9,000, compared to the executive's $435. The House does include $514 million spread across 6 programs related to teacher recruitment, including scholarships, grow your own, and student teaching compensations. The House does include a large school safety proposal of almost $295 million, school safety grants, school resource officers, and then kind of like a one-time risk assessment per building. The House also does include mental health funding of about $175.4 million, Instead of having it through 1 or 2 programs, it does spread it across 10 various programs, which I list here. And again, there's more detail in our summaries, which are available online. And then the House does include $210 million to increase special education reimbursements. In addition to the mandated 28.6%, I believe the executive included an increase, but not as much. One of the larger school aid requests that not in this presentation, but the House did not include, was the $222 million for at-risk that the executive proposed. That was not included. And then kind of the last policy proposals within the House will be related to community college and higher education. The House would include a total 7.8% increase for community college operations. This is a revised distribution formula that caps the floor at 1% and caps the maximum at 10%. And so it isn't a uniform 7.8% across the board. And then higher education, there's really kind of 3 components to think about, even though I have 2 here. One would be to increase the floor funding to $4,672 for full year equated students. That goes to 5 universities of the 15. And then you note the 3 projects below. And then the other 7 would be beneficiaries of the MIPSR's payments. So there's 3 kind of things to think about in concert with the House proposal for higher education. And again, I should also probably go back to community college and note that this is where there is a number of Michigan Reconnect proposals. So the House moves Reconnect from Leo into community colleges, and then also adds almost $150 million to expand the program for a couple of years for 21 to 24-year-olds. So again, that's a very high level 15, 20 minute of what's in the House budget. Again, we have a lot more information. And so this is, I guess you can call it the budget clock, if you will, because I'll be pointing to various parts of the clocks. So right now we're at about 5 o'clock, where both the House and the Senate have passed their proposals. So what will happen until May 20 for the second crack will be procedural votes, where the House and Senate will not concur in each other's proposal and send all the budget bills to conference. And then you have the second revenue estimating conference, which we're at 7 o'clock, where the House fiscal, Senate fiscal, and the state treasurer will concur and consent on what the revenues will be. And those will then be the revenues that leaderships will use for their basis of negotiations in order to ensure that we have a balanced budget. So it's primarily the appropriations chairs, and then the budget director will then negotiate how to spend or save or provide tax cuts. And those agreements are what we call targets. And so those will be the dollar amounts that each individual budget will get to allocate. And then from there, we know mid to late May, I'm hopeful. You never know. I'm still hopeful. And then from there, they will go to a conference committee and floor action. One thing to note from a process perspective is conference committees and then the bills up for floors cannot be amended. And so any proposals, recommendations have to be within the bill itself and not amended on the floor. And so I think from there, I think it'd probably be a good place to open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you. So you can ask questions in the chat, or I believe you can also raise your hand and ask a direct question. But Kevin, let's stay on this slide for a second, because we do have some brand new staffers or folks that work in constituent facing roles. So when you were comparing the executive branch and the House, just sort of tell us where those came from in the process and the sort of role that the chambers and the executive branch will have from here in this circle.
So this is kind of a unique time because when we start at the first revenue estimating conference, you then kind of have three disparate proposals where the House will come up with their own recommendation, the Senate will, and then the executive will. So there's kind of three separate proposals happening. And we're now at the time where those three disparate proposals need to figure out how to be braided together and agreed to. And so we're really at more of all three entities need to agree kind of what things look like going forward. And so there's a lot more, ideally a lot more coordination and kind of consensus making at this step.
And we've been talking about it as sort of the chambers as collective entities, but tell us about sort of where the appropriations committee role is, who's going to be on those conference committees, and sort of where leadership takes over.
Sure. So conference committees are usually the subcommittee chair and then the subcommittee vice chairs. I know there are instances where the appropriations chair is one of the vice chairs. So there are 3 members for the House and then 3 members from the Senate that are part of the conference committee. And there needs to be 2 votes from the House and 2 votes from the Senate members for that conference committee to be agreed to. So that, again, that's kind of where the consensus making has to happen, where you can't just have 3 in the Senate and 1 in the House, or 3 in the House, 1 in the Senate, for proposals to get through. And so again, since you can't have amendments, there's a lot more discussions across the 3 and the 3 and then the 6, as well as at the appropriations chair levels of what's in there. So there's, I guess, less forward-facing proposals at this point.
And Catherine, you mentioned, by the way, anyone can, if you type a question in the chat, I'll get it in, or if you raise your hand, we will get you in. Catherine, you did a little bit of comparison with prior years. It looks like we're on schedule according to this diagram. Give us a sense of how this year compares to previous years, and maybe any big differences.
Oh, I think the one thing you can count on is that no year is ever the same as any other year. General wisdom, and I think Senator Stamas was quoted in MERS or Gone Where, I don't remember which one, is saying that he's hoping that the budget process wraps up by the end of June, early July. And it's an election year, and so that's often sort of the thinking. But nothing is ever nothing. If there's one thing kind of interesting, I will tell people the one thing I've learned more than anything out of the job is patience, because there's always an answer. There's always a solution. There's always something that you can't see, ahead of time, and yet it always does work out. So yes, we are on track right now. And I think, people are hoping to get things done by the end of June and early July. Like I said, way back when, it was always getting it done by July 4th, getting, and leaving for the summer, coming back in the fall. We've had years where that is not the case. I think last year, if I'm remembering correctly, the school aid budget was done end of June, early July, but the rest of the budgets were not done until the fall. The year before that, I believe both were done in September. We've had all kinds of things. One other thing to point out is the question of whether all of these individual, do we have individual conference committees? Some years we have each individual budget bill is its own conference committee, and then sometimes it gets rolled up into an omnibus, sometimes it gets voted on individually. It's been a number of years since they've been voted on individually. But anyway, the short answer is yes, we're on track right now. And and I think that would be the goal, but nothing is certain. For people who aren't familiar, the state's fiscal year goes all the way through September 30th. So technically, the budget needs to be done by October 1st. There is legislation, there is a law in the books that says it should be done by July 1st. So anyway, that's sort of my long rambling answer to what should have been probably a quick one.
And Beverton has asked how public input and public opinion is incorporated into the budget process. And maybe to add to that, if they receive a constituent call about a budget, either proposal or an assumption that a decision's been made, kind of how they should talk about the budget process with constituents.
So public input, public input is generally taken during after the governor's budget comes out and before a subcommittee recommendation is reported on either side. So a lot of times a budget subcommittee will have a day for public testimony, or the public can, reach out to a subcommittee chair's office and say, I'd like to talk on this topic, and they schedule that. However, that's just sort of the public side of things. Clearly, at any point during the process, someone can reach out to a subcommittee chair, their own member from, their own local member with an issue. They can reach out to a subcommittee an appropriations chair with the issue. So I think that's an ongoing, constant dialogue. And one of the things that I'm always, for as many years as I've been doing this, I'm still very, I don't know what the right word is. I'm always happy to know that there is, so much opportunity for the public, whether that's a lobbyist or a constituent or a trade group or whatever, to have input on the process. So I think that's very, it's very exciting to be part of be part of the process.
Yeah, and I'd also add, it's always good to, when you have a request that you're wanting to advocate for, whether it comes from a constituent or from another stakeholder, to develop a good proposal and to then talk early and often with subcommittee chairs as well as appropriation chairs, and also your policy offices. Because again, it's the earlier you can get it in and to keep it fresh on the negotiators' minds is really important for those things to get incorporated into the final agreement.
And I know that we went through lots of detailed differences between the three entities. Is there a big picture summary of at least the differences on whether to spend, save, or cut taxes that one of you be willing to give, as opposed to what to spend the spending pot on? Kevin's nodding, so that means
I'm trying to think about how to. Yeah. So Catherine's numbers are really what everyone's been talking about, where there's about $1 billion of ongoing structural changes you can make, and then the rest is kind of one-time infrastructure proposals, and so that is kind of the big framework that I think all three entities are working through. So that I think then the big picture question is going to be how much of the structural is going to be for tax cuts or tax relief. And then that will then leave kind of whatever is available for kind of structural budget changes and then kind of one-time either capital costs or things like that. So I think the framework, kind of the big picture numbers aren't disagreed on. And so it's gonna be more, how are we wanting to spend the 7 billion of one time? Is gonna be more the discussion rather than do we have 7 billion of one time to spend?
Matt, I've got
And-
a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you both also mentioned federal money. So just give us a sense of when does that have to be decided at the same time? What is the time period in which we'll be spending that? And is there any disagreement on that part? Not on what to spend, but on when or how much.
Well, there's
Yeah, I don't think timing wise, but Catherine, you can go ahead.
Yeah, there's 2.8 billion of the sort of federal discretionary sort of money. It's supposed to address COVID things, but it's pretty broad. So like it can be, recovering from, for the state recovering, that's why it's called State Fiscal Recovery Fund. It's the state recovering. So, if you had tourism losses or parks, park law, you have had lower attendance at parks or things like that, and you need to, so it's that broad. So there's about 2.8 billion of that left too. And just to summarize, I think, Kevin had a great chart. The House spent 2.2 billion of that, I believe, and the Senate basically spent none of that. So there's a lot of that money still to be decided. Is it the end of 24 that it has to be? It's the end of 2024 that money has to be actually committed, and then like the end of 2026 actually fully spent. But so there is still time to use and to decide. So I don't know how much of that discussion will happen. Clearly, the House has a lot of that built in. So the House will be bringing that to the table of discussions as part of the budget process. So this budget process. So yeah, I don't think there's no question. There's no disagreement on how much is left and how much when it has to be obligated by. It's just, how much of it actually gets tied up with this budget process and for what purposes, that will be part of the discussions.
And I think Arnold had a question looking ahead to the governor's role.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can either of you talk about line item veto power of the governor? For instance, can the governor veto money lines as well as boilerplate or language lines? And then can that be overridden?
Yes. yes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so the governor can veto appropriation line items. And also, so for people not fully familiar with the budget, there's a part one, which is all the lines. And then there's the boilerplate, which is the language that talks about the lines. And a lot of times the boilerplate is as informational and as important, if not more important, because it puts conditions and strings on the lines. Sometimes also the boilerplate actually earmarks a piece of. So you might have a $5 million line item, and then in the boilerplate it may say, from that 5 million, $1 million is for XYZ purpose. If it's earmarked, like if the boilerplate actually is a dollar, has dollars attached to it, that can be vetoed as well. And then, yes, the legislature can override, can put that up, can put a veto up for a veto override up for a vote. It doesn't happen often.
No, it does not. You're right.
And I'd add, it doesn't happen often because I believe it's 2/3 of the members from both chambers have to agree with the override. So it is a very powerful executive tool, the line item veto. That is a very important reason why the governor's and her team is part of this budget process. Because obviously, if you want something to be included, that then also means it has to not be line item vetoed.
So if anyone has one last question, now is speak now. Or I guess I will ask you just to go over once again the mental health differences, because it sounded like those were pretty big. So what are the proposals on the mental health side, and kind of where did they come from?
Sure. Since I'm not the school aid person like Catherine is, I assume and I'm more the Medicaid guy. So broadly speaking, the executive proposal included 325 million to construct a new state psychiatric hospital to replace the Hawthorne Children's Hospital and then Reuter, which are both in Southeast Michigan. She's also proposing to expand capacity at the current hospitals, as well as to purchase for the state to purchase private beds to address the wait times, the wait lists for access to the psychiatric hospitals, which is, I think, another consensus that there is significant wait times to get into the psychiatric hospitals. What the House is proposing is to, instead of have a singular campus, to rely on hospital-based providers, the community mental health providers, as well as to construct a new children's psychiatric hospital across the state. And to then also address some of the, I guess, step-down facilities, which are called psychiatric residential treatment facilities, partial hospitalization. And so the House had at least 12 or 13 different places where they could have some capital investment to expand capacity. I believe neither included the costs to expand current capacity at the state psychiatric hospitals. And I can't recall what the Senate proposed, but I don't know, Catherine, if you recall what was there, but that's kind of big comparison between the House and Senate. So you're right, Matt, it'll be a very big point of discussion.
I don't recall in DHHS, sorry, no. I'm pulling up some things on school aid. The governor had 91 million with 50 million for mental health grants. This is in schools. 50 million for mental health grants, 25 million for universal mental health screenings, 11 million for adolescent teen health centers, 5 million for specialized mental health needs. So it was 90 million on the governor. The Senate had 30 million. House had 14 million. The Senate's 30 million was adolescent teen health centers of 15 million, smart school counselors 15 million, and the House had 14 million for adolescent teen health centers. But we also talked about trails. The governor had 150 million. This is for training school mental health professionals. The Senate had 10 million. I don't think the House had any in that. So there are significant, like Kevin was saying for DHHS, there are significant differences on mental health in school aid as well.
All right, well, we are going to have to leave it there because we have an important panel with news you can use on diffusing difficult situations next. But I know that Catherine and Kevin are both available to you and have had their contact information, as are the fiscal agencies as a whole. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both very much. And as Matt reiterated, House Fiscal Agency analysts are available to every member of the legislature, not just those on appropriations. And if you go to their websites, you can find lists of people who cover specific budgets. And you and the member you work for, if you're connected with an office, should feel free to give them a call. Great information today. Really appreciate Catherine and Kevin, you taking time. And as Matt just noted, our next session is one that we have put together along with the advice and suggestions of the folks in the House and the Senate Business Office. We like to have professional development also be a part of these trainings, along with the policy and issue information that we present. So the next session is titled Diffusing Difficult Situations. And with us this morning to discuss that is Jamie Hutchinson. Jamie is Executive Director at the Michigan State University Work-Life Office, where she focuses on family care, career transitions, relocation and community connections, workplace assistance, and research. Following Jamie, we have two folks, one from the Senate and one from the House, to discuss actual situations that you may have encountered as well. One is a good friend of mine, Nikki Brown, who is Director of the Senate Majority Policy Office within the Michigan Senate. She joined the Michigan Senate from the Michigan Municipal League in 2016. And also Lisa Curtis, who serves as Deputy Director of the Michigan House Business Office. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to begin this session. Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Arnold, and thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate everyone for joining us today. I do have my colleague Ebony Lucas on the call. She is shadowing and getting cross-trained as well. So if you see her here, that is why she is here. I wanted to say that this is a pleasure for me to speak to you all today. It's really some work that I've worked on in every aspect of my life. I am the director of the MSU Work-Life Office. I also do consulting on work-life issues for Fortune 100, 500, and small companies. In addition to that, I am a private practice therapist 1 evening a week. I mostly work with historically marginalized teens and families. So diffusing difficult situations is something I'm very familiar with, and we do that a lot in the workplace. At Michigan State University Work-Life Office, we serve nearly 13,000 faculty and staff members. So if you're familiar with MSU, we have employees that do every single thing it takes to run a city, and they represent 72 different industries. I want to start by saying that I know that we are all under a lot of stress. That means your constituents, your colleagues, and you yourself. In the US right now, there's a recent poll that went out by the American Psychological Association in February, and folks are noting their top stressors as inflation, supply chain issues, and global uncertainty. Most folks are concerned about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, retaliation from Russia, marking those as significant sources of stress. So I start off with this just to say that we all have some things that we're navigating. The COVID-19, I guess we're calling that an endemic now, as well as all the changes in our society. And then we know that there have been a lot of folks that are caregivers. Parents overwhelmingly reported concerns regarding their children's development, including social life or development, academic development, and emotional health and development. And more than half of Americans said that the pandemic started, they could have used more emotional support than they received. So just to kind of talk about the fact that we all have global things we're navigating. We all have different roles that we play in our life. In the Work-Life Office, we talk about coming into the workplace as a whole person, having every identity I have as a mother, as a volunteer, as a spouse, as a person with a disability, as a spouse of a veteran. I have a lot of identities. And so while we have global things that we all navigate, or even things in our community that affect us, we also have individual stressors. And we all navigate those things that we don't often talk about at work, whether it's specific family issues, whether it's health issues, whether it's mental health issues. So I just wanted to set the stage with the fact that I understand that you are all stressed too, and that can make the work that we do harder. We're not all up to full capacity. We're not doing business as usual right now. We're still in an endemic trying to work. and navigate all of the uncertainty and change. So one thing is I've talked about 5,000 people in the last year regarding stress and well-being. And when I ask, so how do you know when you're stressed? A lot of people say less patience, less tolerance, and less focus. People are more easily irritated and often take out their stress on those in front of them at the moment. So when we think about workplace safety and diffusing difficult situations, it's important to keep that context in mind. So I like to give a few tips about workplace safety overall. It's important to understand your risks. You know what you do in the workplace and what those hazards are, and keeping them at front of mind will help reduce your risk and strengthen your workplace safety. The next one is definitely easier said than done. Reduce your workplace stress. Common causes of workplace stress are definitely things that I hear about for those working in politics and government and the legislature. Long hours, a heavy workload, and perhaps conflicts with coworkers, volunteers, or community members. So thinking about your self-care is really, really important. And thinking about the community of care you provide and contribute to in your workplace is important. I always recommend when talking about workplace safety or difficult situations that it's important to talk about your concerns. Human resources representatives should be informed about workplace hazards and risks. Talking to your supervisors or talking to your team is really important. Of course, anytime a situation that occurs may lead to further issues, so it's really important to document difficult situations. I know when you're used to perhaps constituents being angry or upset over something someone you work for with has done, you can start to get a little hardened and maybe not take them as seriously. And I just want to say that you matter too, and the work you do matters. So make sure you do document situations and know your policies. What is the policy if there's a workplace safety issue or a difficult situation? Who do you report it to, and what do you work, or what do you report? So I thought today we would take just a couple of minutes before we get to our panel to talk about conflict de-escalation techniques. These are the best tools. So I worked as a mental health practitioner with adolescents facing substance abuse and mental health. I've worked with veterans in our community and around the country, a lot of high conflict folks. And I can tell you as a sports parent previously, some of the conflict that I've had that's been the hardest to navigate has been sports parents. So this is definitely something that you can use both at work and in life. So what is de-escalation? It's aimed at calmly communicating with an agitated person to understand them, to manage or resolve their concerns. And these actions we're going to talk about should help reduce that person's agitation and potential for future aggression or violence. I mentioned all those stressors we're navigating, and most of them are things we cannot control. And when there's stress we can't control, people have that come out at whoever's in front of them. That could be you, that could be a member of the government that they're upset with, and it could be more overly inflated because there isn't a way to get their stress out about the things they can't control. So here are some tips for de-escalation techniques. These have come in really handy in my work at Michigan State University, as well as in my previous roles. If there is someone who is upset, out of control, very emotional, maybe not being a reasoning person, it's important to move to a private area if it seems safe to do so. I understand a lot of the things you all receive could be via email or telephone, but also maybe at an in-person event or something as well. It's really, really important to be empathetic and non-judgmental. Focus on trying to understand the person's feelings. You don't have to agree with them. They may not be real to you, but they are real to the other person. One of the most popular presentations I've given at Michigan State University and in the community over the last 2 years has been navigating change and talking about leading with empathy. Empathy doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger. And empathy is an important leadership quality. People that have more empathy are stronger in diversity, equity, and inclusion. and also relating to a much broader segment of the population. Respect personal space, right? So if you are in person, recommended there's a 1.5 to 3 feet that you stay away from the person. It will decrease their anxiety, which will help them be calmer, and it can help in preventing and acting out behavior. It's really important as professionals. There are so many key things that we all feel really strongly and passionately about. And maybe the things I feel strongly and passionately about are different than the things you feel strongly and passionate about. When I am representing Michigan State University, I'm representing all of our employees. And my goal is to treat them with dignity and respect and to help them resolve their issues or find wonderful resources either at the university or in the community. So even if I am triggered personally, it's very important for me to keep my tone and body language neutral. The more upset someone is, the less they hear your words. Have you ever tried arguing with a teenager? I happen to have a 15-year-old. The truth is the more upset they are, they really don't hear one word that we are saying. And unfortunately, that doesn't end with teenagers. We all get that way. So it's important to know that nonverbal communication of your tone, if on the telephone, your tone in email, or if in person, tone and body language are really, really crucial. That is the energy the other person will pick up on. We do work hard to avoid overreacting. It's important to remain calm, rational, and professional. Emphasize with feelings, not behaviors, right? I understand you're angry, but it's not okay to yell. We're going to talk about boundaries in a minute, and that's very important too. As much as we are servants of the public, whether it's a university or communities, we also have the right for dignity and respect, and it's important for us to have boundaries. And I have said to somebody before, I understand that you're really, really upset, but it's not okay to yell at me this way. I'd be happy to talk to you if we can do so in a respectful way. Remember to focus on the thoughts behind the feelings. Say things like, help me understand what you need. If they say, you suck, I hate your office. Okay, I hear that you're upset. Please help me understand what you need from me. Or you can ask somebody, what has helped you in the past? Or reflect back. Tell me if I have this right. I understand that you're really upset. You're not feeling supported by our office. Help me understand what you need. So we don't want to say, tell me how you feel, because we can't control or change the feelings, but hopefully we can help provide some resources or hear them out, which is a lot of times what people are really looking for is, please, just someone needs to hear me. I feel like I'm screaming into such a wide, broad abyss that potholes are what I'm focusing on today, and I need someone to hear me. I always recommend to ignore the challenging questions that result in a power struggle. So if they say to me, why is the president of the university making such stupid decisions, right? Have you heard that about people you work with? Or why am I making such stupid decisions? I will just say, please tell me again how I can help you, right? So if I start saying, well, the president's doing the best they can, they are trained in this, they're trying to support this, that's not usually helpful because you're going to get in a back and forth. So we're going to move past the personal and we're going to say, please tell me again how I can help you today. I mentioned setting boundaries. You deserve dignity and respect no matter what your role is. And so telling people it's really important for you to be calm in order for us to talk. How can that be accomplished, right? Go back to those questions I said. What has helped you before? Try to refrain from saying things like calm down, right? Have you ever been really heated and someone's like, just calm down? You're like, I don't want to calm down. I hit that pothole again for the 75th time, right? But if you say, it's important for you to be calm so we can communicate better, how can that be accomplished? That is a better way to approach it. It's more respectful and it's also trauma informed. I mentioned earlier in this that we all are carrying around things we don't talk about. And a lot of the anger or dissent that comes to us may not be personal about us. Usually when I take an upset Spartan talking to me, they don't even know me well enough to not like me or disagree with me. It's more what I represent. So it's important to think about those boundaries and have a way that we can really communicate. Something that's really hard for me as a therapist, as a spouse, as a parent, as a human being, as an employee, is allowing silence. I like resolution. I am a verbal processor, but I have practiced this over 25 years and it's really important. It's important to take time to allow silence. Silence gives people a chance to reflect. People need time to make decisions. When they're upset, they really don't think that clearly. So if you say something like, please tell me again how I can help you. Let the silence sit there so people can take a few moments to think about what it is you've said. We talk a lot about boundaries and boundaries in the workplace, and we all know how important it is amongst our colleagues and coworkers. People have more power than other positions and all of those things. It's also important with our constituents, the people we serve, the people we represent. So how do you know if your boundaries are crossed? People can make verbal violations. They can not allow you to speak or be heard. You ever get interrupted over and over again and never get to finish your sentence? That is crossing a boundary. Raising their voice or screaming at you. You know, at MSU, we talk a lot about the freedom to have educational disputes, how good that is for research, and that we have to dissent and have different opinions. And while that is very important, that doesn't mean that fist pounding, yelling, or screaming is an acceptable way to do that. Your boundaries could be crossed if people say things derogatory about you or gossip about you. And then, of course, we think about physical and psychological boundary violations. Are people preying on your self-esteem? Are people lying to you, criticizing or demeaning you, judging or manipulating you, making fun of you, your thoughts and feelings, making demands of your time, bullying or embarrassing you? We've seen a lot of great examples of leadership, and we've seen a lot of examples of leadership that are not respectful. And as a professional person that works in a workplace, working on workplace well-being, it is at the core of everything that I do. No matter what else, I need to treat people with dignity and respect. Our differences can divide us, but we probably have a lot of things in common too. One of them being the right to be treated as a person who has value. So if you don't have these boundaries, how do you set them? It's important to know what is important to you and to honor your feelings. It's important for you to know that you deserve dignity and respect in all settings, your workplace settings, your home settings. And it's important for you to set your boundaries, to let people know around you what you expect and how you want to be treated and spoken to. So I worked at James Madison College at Michigan State University for over 6 years, and I had the pleasure of working with a number of amazing James Madison students, one of which will probably hire me someday. That's just how the world works. And a lot of them did internships in the legislature and consulting firms in the areas of politics. And so when you have newcomers, or if you're mentoring students, it's important that everyone in every level that you work with knows what you expect in the workplace. We might not all ever get on the same page of having shared values because there's so many factors that go into that. But in our workplace, we can truly have a shared ethos or what people can expect when they set foot into our workplace. You will not be yelled or screamed at. I appreciate timely responses within 24, 48 working hours on emails, just setting boundaries, what they are, and setting the stage and an example of how you want to be treated and how you want folks to treat one another. We know through family systems approach and societal systems approaches that there could be a toxic person in your work environment, which makes things difficult. You may not be able to change them, but you can change how you respond and how you build a healthier and more well workplace. So communicating your boundaries and telling people what your expectations are is important to be really direct. We talk in our office about how we want to be responsive. People are coming to us because they have a need. So they should get an email response within 24, 48 hours, even if we don't have the answer. That's establishing a boundary and an expectation. If your boundaries are violated, bring that up right away, understanding sometimes that doesn't feel safe to do. So because of power differentials and other things, so make sure you know who you would turn to if you couldn't bring it up directly. But if you can bring it up directly, it's important to do so directly with that person and document. Prepare for how you'll respond professionally when boundaries are violated. I've had to say to people, I live my life out loud and pretty openly, but there are some things that aren't my place to talk about. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, right? I know how I will respond if I get certain questions. Practice helps us be prepared. And in these last few minutes that we have here today, before we go into our panel, I just wanted to talk about some of the protective factors that can help us all. Sometimes I've talked to groups at Michigan State and they've said, oh, you work on the smushy stuff, you know, team building, psychological safety at work, destigmatizing, talking about mental health and self-care. Well, you do all that smushy stuff. Well, I remind them that we work for a Big Ten Research One institution, and the research shows, academic research and industry research, that well-being is not the smushy stuff, it is the foundation. Maya Angelou says, well, if we don't work, nothing else will. If we are not well and taking care of ourselves, we can't be the best parent, mother, coworker, leader that we can be. So I like to talk about these things because workplace well-being is very important to me. That it's important for you to take time to do things you love and to savor them. Savor them. That means you spend time focusing on only them. Not, I'm going to go for a walk and then scroll on your phone the whole time, right? That's not taking in nature, being grounded. So think of what you like to do. You like to play guitar. You like to open a bookstore. What kind of things do you like to do? Make sure you take time to really savor them. And then it's important for us to think, when our stress does seem higher than usual, to really reset the basics. I know these things aren't new to you, but I bring them up to say that if we put them at the front of mind, we will be more mindful. So think about eating healthy, prepping food on a Sunday so you're ready for your busy week. Getting some exercise. I mentioned the concept of the fact that when we have stress we can't handle, we have to get it out of our body. One of the best ways to get it out of our body is through exercise as you're able. There are other things, journaling, therapy, meditation, but exercise gets the stress out of our body. For me, that is going for even a half-hour walk every single day to be out in nature. Focus on your breathing. We breathe shallowly when we're stressed and don't even realize it. So taking a 3-breath reset, where you breathe in deeply, hold it, breathe out deeply and hold it, it will bring down the physiology of stressful body, right? The heart palpitations, all of those things. And then I have here laugh. The opposite of burnout is doing nothing and having joy. So take time to laugh and to do things you really enjoy. Even if that's at work, even if you take time to, I don't know, watch funny cat videos. I'm trying to think about the least offensive workplace things, but whatever you do to bring laughter in. And of course, I am a therapist. I have a therapist. I believe in therapy. If your stress is high, you may need outside help, someone that can look at your situation in an impartial way, and also meditation. And finally, community care. Build a well workplace. Know who you can go to at work for support, be a good colleague, and emphasize the importance of workplace safety. We'll send a follow-up so you can give us some feedback, but thank you very much for the time to talk about these important topics, and I look forward to the panel. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, I can be reached out to at hutchj@msu.edu.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for that in-depth overview. Really appreciate you sharing your own experiences in this field and your work. Next, I would like to turn it over to, as I said, a couple of your colleagues, Nikki Brown, who is Director of the Senate Majority Policy Office, and Lisa Curtis, who's with the House Business Office. And I can't recall who's going to chat first. Is that you, Nikki, or Lisa?
Lisa, you can go ahead and chat if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for that great presentation, Jamie. I'm on the panel with you taking notes and looking forward to getting that PowerPoint presentation. That was awesome. A lot of the skills you use are just amazing, and I hope that everyone enjoyed them as much as we did. And I think that they're very valuable to the foundation of every day coming into work, things that I've tried to learn and grow from over the years that I've been with the House. one of the things before getting into an example, I just want to share with you is that during the pandemic, answering the phone and dealing with constituents was a challenge. And I recognize that every office had that challenge. And one of the things that I try to do is to not match their level of anger or frustration and let them know that I hear them. And then as that, sometimes that would simmer down and sometimes it would be a long call. But then try and coach them that, I can't help them, but I have to forward them to their own state representative and coach them to leave the best voicemail. Because member offices were getting, I don't know, I'm not in an office. I was in one years ago, but if they're getting 20 to 100 voicemails, encourage them to leave a great message, to be concise. And if you can't help them in a member office and you're sending them someplace else, make sure, because no one likes to be forwarded again. And they're like, am I going to get a person? And I tell them, I coach them, if they're going to get the voicemail, you leave the voicemail that people want to call back. If you're going to hear 30 of them, make sure their name's concise. They don't rant, that they talk about, my name, my address. This is what I need help with. Please help me, be compelling. And that was something I tried to coach the individuals, because try and turn that anger into something helpful, because in the business office, we do not do casework, but I believe I could make a difference so they would get a response.
Nikki?
Great advice, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and first off, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think I am not an expert in dissolving difficult situations like Jamie is, so I very much appreciated her tips and tricks, some of the stuff that I will be adding to my back pocket for future situations. I do think it's really important, though, even if we're not experts in this area, to be talking with each other about how we're resolving conflict, because it gives us another perspective, right? And on how somebody else views the situation, but it also gives us other opportunities and other methods of dealing with the situations as well. And I guess I'll start by saying two of my beautiful children gave me great opportunity this morning before school to help resolve with difficult conflicts. So they were just preparing me for this morning session. But really, I think a lot of this is it's both for professional and personal purposes, right? And so I think there's overarching themes or principles that I like to keep in mind whenever I am anticipating or I find myself in an area of conflict, whether it's with a constituent, whether it's with a member, whether it's with a coworker. And it's so important that we just need to understand that we have no idea what's happening in that other person's life. And the reason that they're angry likely has nothing to do with you, or, it's just the situation that they're in. And so it's so important for us to remember that just like they are battling something in their life, and they also deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And that absolutely, just like Jamie mentioned, flows to you as well. So it doesn't mean you just need to, accept that, if they're angry and yelling at you, but it does mean that your response should be respectful and said with dignity. And in general, what I have found is that people just want to be seen or feel seen and heard. And you have an opportunity to play a big role in somebody feeling that. So don't take it lightly. And I just want to encourage you all that when you do find yourselves in situations like this, see it as an opportunity. Even in that moment, you might not feel like you're helping that person, but just your kindness and your tone can really turn a person's day around. So with that, I thought I'd just go through a couple of times I found myself in difficult situations and what I have done to address those. But dealing with constituent calls, a lot of what Jamie, which I'm happy, a lot of what Jamie was suggesting is what I was attempting to do in the calls. So that was great. Just simply acknowledging their situation, their problem, that you're understanding where they're coming from. You may not agree with it, and you don't need to mention that on the call, but just knowing that they are feeling heard and they're feeling seen. like with what Jamie said, in situations that I have found myself in, if they are being very rude and disrespectful, I have said, you know, sir, ma'am, I appreciate you calling to express your concern. I can see that you have a lot of passion on this issue. Please help me to understand how I can be helpful to you. I have in the past said, I can't help, I'm not able to help you if there's yelling on the phone, because I'm not able to understand where you're coming from. So please help me to understand that better. So I do think it's important to be able to, as Jamie said, sort of practice this. And especially if you're in a member office who is going to handle constituent calls, you're going to have angry constituents calling you, but just kind of have an idea of what you might say in those situations. And also remember that you might not be able to diffuse every situation, and that's okay too. It's not on you to just, it's not on you to dissolve everything, but it is on us to try at least, right? And in those times, it's so important for you to bring that to the attention of whether you're working directly for a member or you're in the policy offices or the communications offices, whatever it is, to bring it to your supervisor, to bring it to your boss, so that they understand that A, these calls are coming in, but B, they can help you walk through situations too. Please don't feel like it's a burden on whomever is your boss to bring this to them. I have conversations with my team on this quite often, and I love that part of it, because we walk through the issues, we walk through the options and the strategies, and that helps them build them up as leaders, and it helps them grow both personally and professionally. And it helps me talk through the issues too, and we can kind of figure out, okay, what would be the best thing to do in this situation? So please don't feel like you have to hold that in either. You can absolutely communicate it, and I would encourage you to communicate that with your supervisor. Conflicts between coworkers, really in this area, I really feel like, you know, there's two sides to everything. And what I encourage, and this is what I was encouraging both of my children this morning, is owning your part of the issue, right? A lot of the issues we have that arise with coworkers stems from not understanding that other person, whether it's their communication style, what they have going on in their own worlds, or just simple miscommunication of words, right? And tone and body language and everything. So I just think it's very important, at least in the situations that I've been in, is to own my part of it, apologize for it. That helps build trust and respect for that other person. And remember that you can only control your own reaction to the situation. And so I found that has helped in the situation. Then if you need to, you talk to, you know, the boss or whoever it is that that is above that can help you walk through the situation too. But and then finally, conflict with members. You will likely run into situations like this, but it's so important to recognize that you are advising that member and you don't push that member, right? At the end of the day, it's our role, to the best of our own ability, to help the members accomplish their desired outcomes or help direct them into areas that could solve their problems. And knowing that has really helped me take a step back and really help to diffuse situations where maybe either a member or a coworker they're raising their voice. I always just let them vent. I let them vent and then let them understand that I understand that they're frustrated, and that I understand where they're coming from. And then I try to reassure them that I'm trying to help them find a solution. And then I typically redirect the conversation on, okay, what are the next steps that we can take to solve the problem? What are the next steps? Do you need more information? Do you need more data that I can help provide for you? And all the while trying to remain calm so we're not matching that energy. And that's really helped me. Actually, very recently, it's helped me to diffuse a situation. And also just remember that it's probably not about you, right? And you just happen to be that person in front of them. And then finally, I cannot echo Jamie's suggestion of the importance of self-care enough. It is critical, no matter where you are in your life. Taking care of yourself only helps you to become the best version of yourself, both at home, at work, in your friendships, everything. So I cannot I'm very thankful that you brought that up, because I cannot stress that, the importance of that enough.
Thank you so much, Nikki and Lisa. Maybe we can have a bit of a conversation. You know, it was noted at the beginning that I used to work as a legislative staffer. And what this conversation and day really reminds me of is that working in the legislature is such a unique experience. Even if, even if you come in and you quote, not a people person, you learn how to deal with people, with all kinds of people from all different backgrounds, from all over the state. Whether you're in a member's office and they work in your district, or you begin interacting with colleagues, with other staffers and central staffers on both sides of the aisle. Some of my best friends remain folks and staffers I met from the other side of the aisle when I worked in the legislature. And you realize that everyone is a human being, they're people. When I first got into the legislature, I had, I had members on something of a pedestal, right? They're elected officials, and oh my gosh, how am I supposed to behave? And, you quickly find out they're people just like you. And then you're going to learn about how to get things done, right? Where to go for information, how to seek out information, how to find that information, whether it's for a constituent or on a policy matter. I think I was fired 3 or 4 times from the first office I worked in. And if it wasn't for the saintly other administrative aide who had been there a while, who saved me each and every time, I learned quite a bit. And this is for Nikki or Lisa. Lisa, you're in a nonpartisan office. So you work with and interact with everyone in the House. And as when I was there were a few hundred employees in the House. It's actually quite a large organization when you look at it. And you've noted to me some of the turnover rate that's happening over the course of time. You have a high turnover rate. What are some of the things that you see that might impact a person's decision to leave and seek out another position? What is it about working in the House for House members or in the legislature that folks need to be wary of or think about?
Well, first off, I want to say the House is an awesome place to work. I've been here 29 years and love the institution, love the growth. I think we've got an opportunity for staff to get here and just they grow incredibly and find other opportunities. I don't want to say it's a negative to being here. I don't see any, there's some negatives. Probably the people that are doing the constituent casework during unemployment, during the pandemic struggled. I recognize that, but I believe that the House also provides an awesome opportunity for staffers to grow. And with that, they're growing and developing. We hire interns, have opportunities here. We provide an opportunity for growth, trainings that you provide. Look at the individuals. Everyone was included today to participate, and from this they grow.
And Nikki, you've worked now in the Senate for 6 years and have had other experiences. What do you think is the difference in the experiences you've had in your career in terms of working in the legislature, and you've worked for a statewide association?
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest difference, and probably the one that I had to overcome more hurdles with, was the political nature of it. When I was formerly at the Michigan Municipal League, I was one of the lobbyists there, so there was some political nature to it in general. But coming on the inside, it is more political, right? And it's something that you have to retrain your brain to think around. But I choose to look at it all as an opportunity for growth, right? And it's new situations that you're put in that help you to become a better person and a better communicator. And so it's been both experiences have taught me so much about how you treat people, how you work with people, how you negotiate with people, how you compromise with people, just in very different ways. And and I'm thankful for each of the opportunities that I've had. But yeah, and I couldn't agree more with Lisa if I tried. I think I echo the same comments she made earlier about the House and being true for the Senate too. I think maybe sometimes what pushes people maybe outside of just having great opportunities is probably some of the political nature of things. But I think when we can retrain our brain to think of it as another opportunity for growth, I think that helps in a lot of these situations.
Lisa, you noted that you've worked in the House for 29 years. By my calculation, that includes some time before term limits as well. What has changed maybe? Can you talk to anything you've seen that's changed over the course of time in terms of a staffer's role pre and post term limits?
I have to give that a little thought. Yes, I did work. I started in 1993, so I've been here quite a while. I was here before term limits. I think just staff and central staff, member office staff is a huge component. The continuity, the knowledge, and I think that the staff that are here, the ones that have been here for a long time, need to work on lifting each other up, helping each other grow in the office, and also I have to pay attention to these new people, young. They have better ways of doing things. They're better tech savvy. So it's just not me with 29 years lifting someone up. I need to be lifted up as well. And that communication, working together, teamwork. I commented Monday in a meeting, just because we've always done something doesn't mean it's the right way. That we have to learn and be open and objective, that there's swifter, better ways.
That's a great, and that comment, Lisa, shows why you've been successful there for so long, because you're flexible, you're open to learning new things, especially from new staffers, that are younger than you these days, and that's great. That's great, and greatly appreciate the assistance of your office in helping put this session together. Jamie, any last thoughts, or Nikki, any last thoughts before we close out the session?
I did think of one more thing, and that's the thing that really sticks with me. Another Maya Angelou quote happens to be, but people will forget the words you say to them, but never forget how they felt when they interacted with you. And so even if you stumble over your words, when you come with dignity, respect, kindness, and compassion, you never know where you'll encounter that person again. And so having that reputation and that rapport with them is so important. And thank you, Lisa and Nikki, for all your wonderful insights and the work that you do.
Lisa and Nikki, any last thoughts before we close this out and take a little break? And also, I don't want to stop anyone. If they've got a question or a comment, raise your hand, put it in the chat. More than happy to hear what other folks have to say about their own experiences.
I think just in closing, I would say that you all are given a very great opportunity to learn from other people. And so I hope that you can view it that way, and that you can use some of these techniques to help you both at work and at home too. They were great suggestions. So thank you, Jamie. But just remember that we all have opportunities to learn from each other. And that's how we become the best versions of ourselves, when we can see how other people do things and how other people view things, and we can take those into account when we have conversations with them.
Thanks, Nikki. Anything else, Lisa, that you'd like to add?
I'm all set. Thank you so much. And I hope that Jamie will share some of her slides, if she would, with the team, maybe in the group chat or available later. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly have the slides. We'll email all of the folks here the slides and links to bios and so on and so forth. So look for that after the session today. Anyone else? Any comments or questions from you all? And of course, Jamie has given us her contact information, and Lisa and Nikki, of course, are also available. We're going to take a short break. We're going to get back together at 11:10. And at 11:10, we're going to hear from a few folks from state agencies to talk about constituent issues, how best to contact them, what some of the best methods are. We'll have folks here from the Unemployment Insurance Agency, from the State Housing Development Authority, and from the Department of Transportation. So take a bit of a break and come back at 11:10. And again, thank you to Jamie and Nikki and Lisa. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, why don't we get restarted? Appreciate everyone sticking with us for the entire morning. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Arnold Weinfeld. I'm Associate Director at MSU's Institute for Public Policy and Social Research. And I'm pleased now to welcome our panel of legislative or agency representatives. Again, this is a session that we try to do each and every time, is bring a few folks from those state agencies that you might be receiving constituent calls on issues from. And with us today from Unemployment Insurance is Rachel Wineland. Rachel's a legislative liaison for the Michigan Unemployment Insurance Agency, which is in the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. From the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, we have Mark Garsha, who also serves as a legislative liaison and as a community affairs liaison for MISTA. And thirdly, we have Troy Hagan, who serves as Director and State Transportation Advisor for the Office of Governmental Affairs within MDOT. And since I am one with a last name that starts with W, we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So Rachel, if that's okay with you, you'll be first up. So please get us started.
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, are you going to go ahead and show the slides, or would you prefer that I share my screen?
If you can show them, that'd be great. This way you can control them. Let me know if you need me to do them.
Okay. Yeah, just give me 1 second to get those shared. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I am assuming everyone can see them. Can you see them?
Yep. Great.
Great. Okay, thank you. I am Rachel from the Unemployment Insurance Agency. I'm the legislative liaison here. And so today I'm hoping to provide you some information, some basic information on unemployment insurance and how we provide benefits, and then also provide some information on our Curtis system. These are some additional resources that are available on the agency. There's some how-to tutorials on the YouTube channel, the UIA handbook, MyWAM handbook, and Ask Ava chatbot. Those are all available at our website. There's also this inbox right here at the bottom, this UIA legislative@michigan.gov. That is our legislative inbox. That is the opportunity for your offices to inquire on policy questions or process-related questions. Sometimes we do have some offices that send claim-specific questions. We do ask that if this inbox is used for that purpose, that there's a Curtis inquiry that's entered first, and if the office allows opportunity for that process to occur in that communication within the Curtis system. Sometimes there are complex cases where there are some additional questions, and so these may be appropriate for the legislative inbox. If you're sending an email to this inbox, we do ask, and it is claim specific, we do ask that you include a case claimant name, phone number, address, claim number, and Curtis inquiry number as well. Wanted to talk a little bit today about regular unemployment compensation and and who might be eligible, so who this applies to. Regular unemployment compensation provides temporary income to those who have lost their job due to no fault of their own. So that's an important phrase right there. Unless the requirement is waived, claimants must be able, available, and actively seeking full-time work and must meet minimum wage requirements to be eligible. Regular unemployment compensation can be provide benefits for up to 20 weeks, up to $362 per week, and the effective dates of the claim are a year. So from the date that the claimant first requests a claim a year from that point. So it's up to 20 weeks within that time frame. Without getting into too much detail, employers pay a quarterly tax, which goes to the trust fund to fund unemployment benefits for unemployed workers. We are coming out of a time frame of pandemic unemployment programs where eligibility was far expanded to independent contractors, 1099 workers, gig workers, some part-time workers that might not otherwise be eligible for regular unemployment. These workers would typically not be eligible for regular unemployment compensation, although regular unemployment compensation can encompass part-time workers, but they must meet the base wage requirement through a formula. And then also wanted to additionally add that unemployment is implemented based on requirements of the Michigan Employment Security Act. Who's eligible? Those who are unemployed, those who are able and available for full-time work, those who are actively seeking work. Predeterminations on eligibility cannot be given. Workers should file for benefits, answering all questions fully and truthfully for the agency to determine eligibility. So this is just basically, we don't take these, kind of case scenarios of would this person be eligible? They should just apply, provide the information as accurately as they can, and then they'll receive a determination. This is some information on how a claimant can file. There are two ways, either online or by phone. This is our main web page here. This provides a little bit of information about how to file a claim. Important things to note on this page is the what do I need to file. This information is very important, and they will need all of this information in order to be able to file. Additionally, claimants should have this information in document form as well, as far as Social Security card, driver's license or state ID, and a birth certificate. So sometimes some of you may be familiar with ID verification process. They will need these documents in physical form in order to be able to provide them to the agency for their benefits. So it's helpful when they file that claim that they can go ahead and file them if they don't have them, but they want to secure them as soon as possible. So if they don't have, for instance, their birth certificate, they're going to want to try to get that. Or if they have lost their Social Security card, they're going to want to go online and have a copy of that Social Security card sent to them. Employment information for the last 18 months is also very important. The employer oftentimes will just provide the most recent employer, but they really do need to provide employment for the previous 18 months. This is used to establish eligibility and base wage requirements. And if they don't list all employers, this can delay the process for them to receive benefits. So it's very important that they do that. Monetary determination. So once a claimant has applied for unemployment, they will receive a monetary determination or pretty quickly after they apply. So after filing, this form is called the 1575C. It is, if they are requesting mail, it's mailed to them. And if they're requesting notification by MyWAM, it's also always available on MyWAM. So in this form, it details if their claim has been allowed or denied based on the wages that they have earned, how their weekly benefit amount was calculated and what their weekly benefit amount is, the number of weeks that they are allowed, their separation reason from each employer, what week to begin certifying, and their protest rights if they disagree with that determination. Work registration. This is a requirement, that an element that they have to do to receive unemployment. There are some work registration and work search waivers. That's unusual circumstance, but on occasion there are some various types of waivers, and I won't get into the details of that because there are quite a few of them. There is a document online that kind of explains each waiver, but generally most claimants have to do work registration. So these are the steps of work registration. They have to create their job seeker profile in Pure Michigan Talent. And then they also have to meet with Michigan Work Service Center. So this can occur either virtually or in person. It is important that they complete this task before they certify. That's a very important element as well, because if they don't do that, this will also delay benefits. Biweekly certifications. So each claimant must certify their eligibility every 2 weeks to receive payment. Again, there are 2 ways to do this. They can do this online or by phone. And there is kind of the schedule here for calling in and certifying by phone. Most people, I think, do certifications online. It's probably the easiest process to do it online. Work search requirements. Again, most individuals will have to complete work search. There are some instances in which there is a work search waiver, but majority of our claimants will have to complete work search. This means that they have to actively search for work and report at least 1 work search activity for each week that they claim benefits. They do have to report these when they do their certifications. And we do recommend that they keep a written log of weekly work search activities with details such as date, activity, website that they utilized, employer address, method of contact, etc. So claimants should keep that log if there's any reason that needs to be audited, or if there's any question with regard to that. It's helpful that they have those details within their log. There are also some examples of some work search activities that are listed here, such as submitting a job application, interviewing, attending a job fair, participating in reemployment services through Michigan Works. There are other activities as well. These are just probably the most common that are chosen. These work search activities are detailed in the Michigan Employment Security Act. Non-monetary issues. So earlier we talked about monetary issues, which determines if a claimant is eligible. So that's the initial eligibility. Are you eligible based on your wages? Non-monetary issues are issues that means that the claimant certification was accepted. So they have wages to establish a claim, but they are not yet payable because there is an issue that needs to be reviewed first. When there is an issue, a situation, or a condition that affects their benefit rights, the agency must investigate. There are some examples of some non-monetary issues. This is definitely not a complete list. There's a fairly extensive list, but these are just a few of maybe more common ones that we see. This could be that a claimant has voluntarily quit their employment. So that's called voluntary quit, or a claimant did not seek work or accept employment. Once a review or investigation concerning the eligibility for benefits is complete, they are notified via their MyWAM account. We do encourage, and this is a very important piece, that claimants continue to certify biweekly while they wait for a decision to be made. If they're not certifying, there will be additional issues after the fact if they wish to certify. That'll cause other non-monetary issues. So they just want to keep certifying, even if they are not receiving benefits, if they believe that they're still eligible and they're still wishing to collect unemployment. Fact finding. When there are non-monetary issues on a claim, the claimant is often sent fact finding, which means that there are questions related to the claim that they need to answer for the agency. This typically happens after they have completed certification. This is something that they will see when they log into their MyWAM account. If there's a link that says additional fact finding is required for your claim, they need to click on that link and answer those questions. It is very important that they answer those questions. And additionally, if there's any narrative that they would like to provide pertinent to the situation, they can do so. They can use line paper, written format, or they can add additional information on their MyWAM account as far as any details that they need to provide specific to the situation. We do encourage claimants they should provide as much detail as possible while staying on the topic of the issue at hand. So this will help the agency review the circumstances and understand the details of the chain of events. This is also a very important slide. Claimants should read all correspondences. So, and read them carefully. So they should review them. If there's confusion or they don't understand something, they should certainly contact the agency. We do have phone, virtual, and in-person appointments available, and can explain the details of any letters that they receive if there is question. Protests. If a claimant disagrees with a redetermination, or determination, they can submit a statement protesting the decision. Their statement should include the reasons why they disagree with the decision, and should be completed within 30 days of the date on the letter on the determination or redetermination. If they don't submit their protest within 30 days, then that decision does become final. At the point that it becomes final does not necessarily mean that the claimant cannot continue to protest, but then they have to explain why they're late. CRT and Curtis, so this is our centralized response team, and Curtis is our centralized response team inquiry system. This was basically implemented as a way of allowing the legislative offices to communicate with our office on claimant issues or concerns related to their claim. This is the website to access Curtis here. And these are the types of offices that can access Curtis. This is what Curtis looks like. A couple of important things to note here. You'll see this little PDF icon. That is our submitter guide. So if you need assistance with knowing how to submit an inquiry on Curtis, just simply click on this PDF icon right here, and it will pull up a submitter guide, which gives you directions. Also, another feature that's helpful is Ask Ava for help. If you have questions in regards to unemployment process, policy, anything, you need the phone number to customer service, you need to know the hours for in-person appointments, you can just ask Ava. So that's an important piece right there too, because Ava has lots of good information and sometimes can be helpful when you have questions. This is what the dashboard looks like. So when the office has submitted inquiries, you can see that there's an inquiry number right here under this first column. This would be the name of the person that the inquiry was submitted for, and then any additional information. Curtis. So these are the things that you can do on Curtis. You can enter inquiries, update inquiries, you can close your inquiries. So let's say something's been resolved or there's no longer a need to have the agency contact the claimant. You can do that through Curtis. Inquiries are worked through in the order that they are received. There are escalation opportunities. Each office has escalation. So if you have a claimant that's in particular need, then you can go ahead and escalate those issues. When to use Curtis? So we do encourage that you encourage the claimant to follow this process first. So encourage them to call customer service, encourage them to schedule a virtual or in-person appointment, and make sure that they've read and understand all of the correspondences that they've received. This pertains to that submitter guide. This has all the details of what is contained within that submitter guide. So if you need to know how to do any of these activities, they are detailed within that guide. And then again, these are some additional resources that can be helpful. So our webpage and also this chat box, this Ask Ava for help, again, a really helpful feature when you have, kind of those more basic questions. So with that, that completes my PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if we're taking questions at this time or what there's opportunity for, but if there's opportunity for questions, I certainly would be willing to field a few.
Thank you, Rachel. Nice presentation. I don't see any questions yet or any hands raised. So I think we will move on to our next presenter. Again, if you do have a question, you can use the chat or raise your hand, and we'll unmute you and allow you to do that. But until that time, Rachel, if you could stop sharing, and we will move on to Troy Hagan. Troy is with the Michigan Department of Transportation. Troy, appreciate you being here today. I gather with all that all those funds that are coming into the state, you're pretty busy.
Yes, we certainly are, Arnold. Thank you for having me today. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk with the members of the House staff that I work with on a regular basis. I'll start with just a little bit about myself. Troy Hagan, Director of MDOT's Office of Governmental Affairs. I started in the legislature in 1997 as a House intern, Worked in the House from 1997 to 2008, and then transferred to the department in 2008 as the legislative liaison, and then was very appreciative to be appointed by Governor Whitmer to the director of the Office of Governmental Affairs at the department. So I've sat in all of your seats, so I know the constituent contacts that you do take on a regular basis. And I know that you're probably all busy, especially busy at this time of year with contacts about construction projects that are just starting. So I've shared in the chat 3 links to important documents, and I can share them separately so that the hot link is there to bring them up. But it's the official guide to MDOT, the 2022 Fast Facts in the 5-year transportation program. Those are 3 documents that, in my opinion, are very beneficial for all legislative offices to have on hand, and I'd be more than happy to provide hard copies to any offices that would like a hard copy of those documents, but they are on our website electronically. So really, the first document, the 2022 Fast Facts, that one is a good document for everybody to just carry with them, because it does lay out all of the responsibilities and statistical information regarding the department. So as you can see, MDOT is in charge of 9,649 state trunk line route miles out of the 122,000 miles in the state of Michigan. So MDOT's jurisdiction is over I, M, and US routes. But on those I, M, and US routes, we move 74% of all freight tonnage moved by truck in 2018, and 74% of all freight value travels by truck on state truck line. So even though we have only a fraction of the route miles in the state, that the highest percentage of traffic and freight is moving on the MDOT system. So if you just walk through that Fast Facts document, and you can see that it lays out all of the information that you may get on any statistical questions related to transportation or to the transportation system in the state of Michigan. And then it details the gas tax, vehicle miles traveled, all of that information. So this is just a good one for staff and members to travel with. So if they get any question, they could refer to this and have it at their fingertips. Now, much more with a much more plethora of information is the official guide to MDOT, which is a very large comprehensive document that our Bureau of Transportation Planning puts together. And that document lays out, it also includes the Fast Facts, but it lays out information on the entire department, from department leadership through how the department is broke down to frequently asked questions that legislators may get. So MDOT is broken into 7 regions, and within those regions, there's 21 transportation service centers. So certainly for the legislature, we are a good, MDOT's Office of Governmental Affairs is a good conduit into the department, but it's also very beneficial for legislative staff and legislative members to get to know the folks on their local level within those 7 regions and within those transportation service centers, because those folks know what's going on the ground. And so it's just good to do regular check-ins with those individuals, and they'll be able to let you know what projects are upcoming, what the status of projects are, how they're progressing, things of that nature. And I'm always happy to help facilitate any meetings with those local staff to do, meet and greets and introductions. So you can start to make those connections and do those regular check-ins with transportation service center managers and region engineers. And they're more than happy to do that and work with legislators and or participate in town halls or local meetings with local officials to be able to make sure that we're doing that coordination across the board with local officials and the public in which we all serve. So I would highly recommend familiarizing yourself with that document as well, the official guide to MDOT, and especially the frequently asked questions, because those can help to at least, if you get a telephone call or an email, you can respond to begin the conversation with your constituent, because it talks about things about why are Michigan's roads worse than those in surrounding states? If so, why? How are MDOT projects funded? How are they advertised? So just a lot of information like that you can at least have at your fingertips to continue or begin a conversation with a constituent when they reach out to you on a transportation related issue. And then lastly, and probably the most important, is MDOT's 5-year transportation program document. And that lays out a lot of information in regards to where MDOT is going in the next 5 years for our transportation program. We're required by state statute to publish that document. And it's just a very good document for legislators and a good practice for transportation agencies across the country to participate in. It's a rolling 5-year plan, and it's broken out by the 7 MDOT regions, and it will provide you detail on what projects MDOT has coming up within the next 5 years, whether that's a full reconstruction, whether it's a capital preventive maintenance project, the dollar total, the beginning and end of the project. All of that information is contained in that document, along with further narrative on the direction in which the department's going in each of the other multimodal areas. And by multimodal areas, to this point, I've focused on our road and bridge projects, but you have to remember that MDOT also, within our purview, has the Office of Passenger Transportation for public transit. We have the Office of Rail for passenger rail, and coordinating with freight rail in the state of Michigan. We have the Office of Aeronautics that works with our airports. So we have that. We are a true multimodal department that works across all the modes of transportation, and it will provide information. The 5-year plan provides information on those areas as well. So those 3 documents are very useful in helping to respond to constituents and prepare legislators for town halls or constituent meetings or meetings with local officials. And like I said, we're always here to help assist in any way we can in working on constituent issues or preparing for any type of constituent conversations or policy conversations. More than happy to take any questions related to the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy, for that information. I'm not seeing any questions posted or hands raised. So at this point, we'll move on to Mark Garsha with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Arnold. Glad to be here. Similar to Troy, I began my tenure with the state back in '97 as a house intern. Spent a little over 10 years working in different capacities in the Senate. And I've been with MISTA since 2012. So, rocking and rolling. Anything housing related, you folks know where to find me. Judging by my email inbox, that hasn't been difficult. So, MISTA is kind of an outlier agency as it relates to the state, for the sole reason that we don't take any GFGP during the budget process. Essentially, our operating expenses are financed through the sale of tax exempt and taxable bonds. We sell those bonds and notes to private investors. And then proceeds from those bonds and notes are loaned generally at below market interest rates to developers of rental housing. And we also use those to fund home mortgages and home improvement loans. The things that probably most concern you folks is that the authority administers federal various federal housing programs. I'm just going to touch on a few that are probably nearest and dearest to your constituencies. We deal with housing choice vouchers, or what commonly would be known as Section 8. Now, the state of Michigan itself gets an allotment from U.S. Treasury and HUD somewhere north of 32 to 35,000 vouchers. Of those, MISTA administers about 28,000. So obviously we are the largest administrator in the state. Obviously have the most vast capacity to work with folks on that front. Now there are two different types of vouchers. One is the portable voucher, which travels with the tenant. That means that tenant can utilize their voucher in any residence that is willing to accept them and is willing to adhere to the guidelines set forth by the federal government. The other type of voucher is project-based vouchers, where the voucher itself is attached to the structure. Oftentimes when we do new development, folks will come in and apply to have project-based vouchers attached to their development. It's a great incentive to get folks that are in desperate need of housing into housing. And generally speaking, the populations that we serve with these vouchers are folks that are at or below 60% of the area median income. Another area that you guys will be keenly interested in is our MyHalf program. MyHalf is the Michigan Homeowners Assistance Fund. This was funded through the COVID relief dollars. It operates similar to, if any of you folks have been around for a while, we used to have the Step Forward program, which came out of the 2008 recession. The MyHalf program, the COVID relief dollars that we were allotted, just north of 240 million. We launched the program on Valentine's Day. And during that time, we have had north of 15,000 applications. That said, your constituents will have to note that obviously we're dealing with a high volume of applications. Applications as of now are probably taking somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks to be processed. And they're basically processed in the order they're received. There are some instances where we're able to escalate some of the applications based on, if folks are on the cusp of foreclosure or going to sheriff's sale or those sorts of things. But basically, the MyHalf program is able to help folks with delinquent mortgage and housing expenses, delinquent land contract payments, delinquent property taxes, delinquent condo, homeowners, HOAs, HOA fees, excuse me, delinquent homeowners insurance, some utilities, I believe, gas, electric, water, and sewer, as well as delinquent internet broadband payment. Obviously, folks need to fall under a certain threshold to be able to qualify. This program is working with folks that are under 150% of the area median income. And those AMIs can be found on our website. They're broken down county by county. So if you have questions on that front, basically all of this can be found on our website, which is www.michigan.gov/MSHDA, MSHDA. The next program I wanted to touch on was our SARA program, which is the COVID Emergency Rental Assistance Program. This one has had several iterations simply because it's had federal or several funding sources. So it's kind of been ongoing for the last year and a half. The program itself has received in excess of $1 billion. As of the end of last month, we had right around 240,000 applications. And of those, just south of 200,000 were initial applications, and another 50,000 were recertifications, or folks that were coming back for a second or third time because of an additional COVID hardship. And that's an important note. Folks, to be able to qualify for this program, need to have some semblance of a COVID hardship in order to participate. Let's see. So essentially, as I said, this program got north of $1 billion. We basically already have enough applications on hand to spend about 950 million of that billion. So that said, you may want to note that the program, we envision the application portal closing by the end of next month, and the funds to be fully expended, depending on our partner agencies throughout the state, sometime in the fall. So if you know of anybody that needs rental assistance, please tell them to get cracking on the application process, and we will try to get them in. Again, that information can be found on the website. Again, www.michigan.gov/MSHDA/SARA, CERA. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and I will put a link to this in the chat. We just completed our annual conference, which is the Building Michigan Communities Conference, at the end of which we unveiled what is the first iteration ever in the state of the statewide housing plan. So essentially, we worked with a good number of stakeholders that we've worked with on a consistent basis. I think the stakeholder panel included upwards of 100 to 150 individuals from all walks of the state, and we included several other departments in that as well. Essentially, what we've put together is this. This is basically the fact sheet on the statewide housing plan. Again, the impetus behind this is that quite often we find that cities and municipalities throughout the state oftentimes don't know exactly what they need as far as housing is concerned. This is helping to address that. Essentially, we based a lot of the data off of a housing needs study, and input from those stakeholders about what is needed throughout the state, and it's broken down by region, I believe, county by county. But yeah, all of that information can be found at the link I provided in the chat. We are now currently in the strategic planning phase. How are we going to implement all this data that we compiled? So obviously still a process, but we're hoping and we're hopeful that that the ball will really get rolling on this sometime in the fall as well. So again, a lot of this info, including our program guide, most of what we do is on our website. Again, www.michigan.gov/MISTA. And again, anything housing related, you can fire my way. If it's not us that is handling a particular case, we can certainly find where it's being administered and point you in the right direction. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mark. Greatly appreciate that. And thanks again to Troy and Rachel, for all three of you, for taking time this morning to be with us. We do have a question. There we go. I was just going to ask for questions. This one's for you, Mark. What resources would you recommend for staff who want to familiarize themselves with navigating the Section 8 process for constituents?
Yeah. Again, I know it's kind of a cop-out, but I would simply point you to our website. If you go to michigan.gov/MISTA and you pull down, I believe the tab is renters, you can pull up the Section 8 information, and it's broken down into both housing choice vouchers and project-based vouchers, the two that I talked about. Basically there you can get links to county waiting lists, you can get application tutorials, you can get frequently asked questions. You know, obviously it's an intricate program that has a lot of moving parts. Obviously it's very oversubscribed. There are waiting lists throughout the state, and quite often they only open on a limited term. Obviously down in the Tri-County area, the waiting list can be upwards of years long. We do have what is considered a homeless preference. So if someone's on the verge of homelessness or is already experiencing homelessness, they can potentially get bumped up to the top of the list. But generally speaking, it's a very competitive process, but yeah, you know, certainly to familiarize yourself with the ins and outs, I would go to the website.
A couple more questions, all for you, Mark. One's regarding the work you engage in on a yearly basis, I think, around the low-income housing tax credit and the QAP process for affordable housing development. How do you do that kind of work? That's more engagement with stakeholders, I gather.
Yes, very much so. So we have a what's called the QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, which is cobbled together every other year. So the document itself is a 2-year rolling document. That document is assembled with stakeholder input. We do public hearings, and it's not put together lightly. Obviously, we get input from the development community, we get input from the nonprofit community, all sorts of angles on that front. And basically, what that document does is lays out our plan for how we intend to allocate the credit itself. So, for those that aren't familiar with LIHTC, it is a program that was developed back in the early '80s. You know, back in the day, they looked at public housing, and it was very stoic and kind of outdated. It was, you know, compared to, you know, the Soviet, you know, concrete bunker system. You know, that it wasn't attractive housing. They needed to come up with another way to incentivize public-private partnership. So they created the LIHTC program. Basically, each state is awarded, you know, a dollar amount of credit on a yearly basis. In Michigan, we get right around $25 million per year. This is another program that's very highly competitive and oversubscribed. So for every probably 4 applications we get, we can only fund 1 project. We have 2 funding rounds during the year, one in April and one in September. Essentially how it works is folks that are either coming in to do new development or revamp existing properties can apply for the credit. We score it based on what's outlined in the QAP. And those that score the highest are generally the awardees. Once a credit is awarded, essentially that credit will pay for close to 90% of the development costs. The credit is awarded over 10 years. There's generally a compliance period for the development where they have to follow all the rules that U.S. Treasury outlines. And generally that compliance period lasts upwards of 30 years. So it's not for the faint of heart, but obviously, as I said, it's a very competitive program and one that that we get a lot of our new development done with. And as I said earlier, the new development is with that public-private partnership. So more often than not, the LIHTC or affordable housing that you see in your neighborhood is not going to look any different than the market rate housing that you see in your neighborhood. You know, back in the day, we used to deal with NIMBY issues and that sort of thing, and this has really alleviated that aspect. So I think I answered the question.
I think so. I think there's just one more.
Sure.
As we close out the session. Resources for seniors who may be facing foreclosure.
Yeah, that's simply put, that's the MyHalf program currently. And again, if they, as I suppose the MyHalf program is only applicable if they've experienced a COVID hardship, but more often than not, if they have not faced a COVID hardship, just send it my way. Essentially what we will do is get them in touch with their local HARA, which is the local Housing Assessment and Resource Agency. And they can assess what, you know, the situation is. They can perhaps work with the mortgage lender on the senior's behalf to try to work out some semblance of a workaround. Or they can, you know, find other options that might best suit the homeowner themselves.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks again to you, Rachel and Troy, for taking time this morning. I want to thank again our partners, the Office of Government Affairs at MSU, MSU Extension, Legislative Leadership, and in particular, the staff at the House and Senate Business Office for helping us put together today's session. As you've seen in the chat, we have resources available online, also an evaluation. You'll probably receive all that in a follow-up email. And next Friday at the same time, we'll have additional sessions. We'll get more in depth into the legislative tax cut proposals that have been put forth, additional professional development on time management, and some guidance from the Legislative Service Bureau on printing rules and regulation, and then another round of agency representatives. So please join us again next Friday. Again, thank you to everyone for taking time to attend and to all our presenters. Have a great weekend and enjoy next week's warm weather. Thanks, everyone.